Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. Spirit Animals. Wildborn. Chapter 4, Essix. Rollan loitered on the corner by the apothecary, keeping his back to the store. Down the cobbled streets, between buildings with thick plastered walls and rounded facades, Smarty and Red were looking his way. Rollan tried to convey with his eyes that they shouldn't draw attention to him. They got the message and faced elsewhere. An orphan since age 5, Rollan knew that stealing was part of survival. Even so, he avoided it whenever possible. He had no problem with claiming leftovers, since the owners were done with them. People with money abandoned all sorts of things. Rollan had found clever ways to lay claim to unfinished meals and discard clothing. That was salvaging, not thievery. But his current problem would not be solved through scrounging. There was no such thing as leftover willow extract. It was too valuable. He and the boys used to have some, thanks to Hans, but it had run out. And now Digger had a terrible fever. They had wasted the precious medicine on less serious sicknesses. Had they known this was coming, they would have saved some. But it was too late. They wouldn't be in this mess if Hans hadn't gotten arrested. The boy had a gift for pilfering, and life had been much more comfortable with him around. But Hans had gotten greedy and started going after real valuables. The military caught him and locked him up. Rollan glanced over his shoulder at the apothecary. As with many businesses in town, a banner emblazoned with Essix, the falcon, patron beast of Amaya, hung over the entrance. Digger really needed help. He was burning up, and it kept getting worse. Without medicine, he could die. Folding his arms, Rollan scowled at the ground. He didn't like to steal, but it wasn't out of some deep respect for the law. Many of the profiteers in Cornaba made their fortunes on the backs of the poor, taking everything they could from people who had almost nothing. And the law protected that system. Stealing was just too risky. When kids got caught taking even the smallest thing, the penalties were harsh, especially as you got older. Plus, he had his honor. His own version of it anyways. Never take from the poor, never from the sick or infirm, and always try other alternatives first. The other boys teased Rollan for his reluctance to pinch things. They had tried to nickname him Justice, but he had forcibly declined. Actually, he had dodged all of their attempted nicknames, which was why he was the only guy in the group without one. No matter how he looked at it, stealing from the apothecary would be difficult. The owner had an unfriendly reputation. His employees were vigilant, and they turned troublemakers over to the militia. Rollan had warned the others not to go after the extract. Hans could have managed it, but nobody else had a fraction of his skill. Rollan wasn't above asking for help. Begging had been good to him. Certain bakeries and inns didn't mind handing over stale bread or other unwanted food. But times were hard, and getting harder. Amaya was a young continent, much of it still untamed, and even in a big town like Hornaba, if a harvest went poorly or if pirates harassed the importers, pretty soon everyone felt the squeeze. Those at the bottom of the pecking order felt it the worst. There wasn't time to beg for enough money to buy the extract. Rollan had decided he would swipe it if he could. After all, the life of a friend outweighed some rule. But after casing the store, he didn't think success was possible. Should he try anyway? Rollan had asked for help from everywhere that made sense, except the apothecary. Unlikely as that option seemed, it might be more fruitful than the alternative. Steeling himself, he went inside. The owner, Aloy Valdez, stood behind the counter in a white apron. He had bushy gray sideburns and a receding hairline. His eyes locked on Rollan, who always drew attention when he entered a business. Even in his best clothes, he was too young and too scruffy. Rollan walked directly to the owner. "Good afternoon, Mr. Valdez." Rollan tried on his brightest smile. He knew beneath the grime he was a handsome kid, with his dark torso of hair and tan skin. But there was a lot of grime. "Hello, boy," the man replied, his gaze suspicious. "Can I help you?" "Not me so much as a friend," Rollan said. "He has a horrible fever. This is the third day, and it keeps getting worse. I'm an orphan. Him too. He needs willow extract. I don't have any money, but I can work hard. Help tidy up, whatever you need." Mr. Valdez made the "I wish I could help you" face Rollan had seen so often. "That's an expensive remedy, and it's in short supply these days, making it more costly." "I don't mind putting in a lot of work," Rollan offered. Mr. Valdez sucked air through his teeth. "You know how times are. My two assistants already take care of everything. I have no spare chores and plenty of qualified men waiting for a vacancy. Sorry." Rollan's cheeks burned with shame, but Digger needed him. "Maybe you could get creative? To help stop a kid from dying." "You want charity," Mr. Valdez said knowingly. "I'm afraid I have a strict no charity policy. Medicines are pricey. If your friend were the only soul in town who couldn't pay, I'd surely lend a hand. But endless people have desperate needs and no money. If I give you a free remedy, I should provide it for all the others as well. I'd be out of business in a week." "I won't tell anyone where it came from," Rollan promised. "You might not be able to help everyone, but you can help him. Please, Mr. Valdez. He's got nobody." "Secrets like free will extract don't keep," Mr. Valdez said. "Besides, your tale may be true, but some such stories might not be. How am I supposed to tell the difference? I can't help you. Good day." Rollan had been dismissed. What options were left? If he returned after this, Mr. Valdez would study his every move. Stealing the extract was no longer a possibility. "How would you feel if you were alone in some alley, sick, no place to go, and everyone ignored you?" "That's why I don't live on the streets," Mr. Valdez said. "That's why I worked hard to get where I am, and why I intend to stay here. The needs of an urchin are not my obligation." "Hard work doesn't always get you off the streets," Rollan said, frustration surging through him. "It won't always keep you off them either. What if your store burned down?" Mr. Valdez's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" Rollan raised both hands. "No, I mean, bad luck can strike anywhere." "Aldo," Mr. Valdez called, "this person needs help finding the door." The cause was lost. Rollan decided he could stop licking Mr. Valdez's boots. "You need to find a heart. I hope you catch something without a remedy. Something besides old age. A large man with his sleeves rolled back over thick, hairy arms strolled in from the back of the store. He came straight for Rollan. Behind him, Smarty ducked behind the apothecary counter. How had Smarty gotten in here? Through the back door? What was he thinking? His nickname was a joke, not a compliment. He was going to get them both busted. Rollan tried not to stare at his friend. Instead, he watched Aldo approach. You thick, Aldo barked. Beat it. Rollan slided towards the door, trying not to move too quickly. He needed to get out of there, but if he ran off, Smarty would get nabbed for sure. Aldo closed the distance, seized Rollan roughly by the back of his neck, and marched him towards the doorway. Don't let us catch you back here again, the big man warned. Aldo, Mr. Valdez called. Looking back, Rollan saw Smarty speeding towards the back of the store. He took a packet of willow extract, Mr. Valdez shouted. Santos! Aldo dragged Rollan towards the rear of the store. Get back here or your friend gets it, the big man yelled. Smarty never glanced back. By the time Aldo reached the back door, Smarty was out of sight. Santos! Mr. Valdez cried, joining them. Where's Santos? On that errand, remember? Aldo said. Mr. Valdez turned his furious eyes on Rollan. All that talk about working to pay off the debt? You were setting me up while your accomplice snuck in here. Very low, even for scum. He did it on his own, Rollan insisted. Save it, kid, Aldo said. You help steal the goods, you'll do the time. Rollan kicked out at Aldo's knee, but the big man took it without a flinch. Rollan could feel the strength of the hand on his neck. Your next appointment is with the Matilla, Mr. Valdez said. Rollan knew there was no point in arguing. At least Digger would get his remedy. The city militia kept a line of cells in the basement of their headquarters. Mildew thrived on the damp walls, and ancient straw littered the discolored stone floor. The interior barriers were composed of iron bars, allowing the prisoners to see each other. Rollan sat on a decaying wicker mat. Men occupied 3 of the other cells. One man was sickly and gaunt. Another had slept since Rollan arrived, and the third looked like the sort Rollan had learned to avoid. He was probably in here for something serious. A guard had informed Rollan that he would go before a judge tomorrow. He was young enough that they might send him back to the orphanage. The thought gave him shivers. There was no worse racket than the orphanage in Caraba. The head guy lived well because he fed the kids the absolute minimum, made them work like slaves, dressed them like beggars, and never wasted resources on things like medicine. Rollan had run off for a reason. He suspected he might actually prefer prison. A door opened, and boots clomped down the stairs. Were they bringing in a new prisoner? Rollan arose for a better look. No, the jailer was alone. He was portly with a stubble jaw. Holding a ledger, he came to Rollan's cell. How old are you? Was this a trick question? Would it benefit him to seem older or younger? Rollan wasn't sure, so he answered honestly. I'm 11 next month. I'm 12 next month. The man made a notation. You're an orphan. Actually, I'm a lost prince. If you take me back to Era, my father will reward you. When did you run away from the orphanage? Rollan considered the question and found no reason to fib. I was 9. Have you had your nectar? The question mildly surprised him. No. You know what happens if you don't take the nectar. A bond could happen naturally. That's right. It's against our town statutes to not drink the nectar within 3 months of turning 11. Good thing I'm already behind bars. Want some advice? You guys should make a law against 11-year-olds dying because they have no medicine. The jailer harumphed. This is no game, boy. Does it sound like a game? Rollan said. Have you ever played the dying alone of a fever because willow bark costs too much? Look, just add my lack of nectar to my list of charges. For the record, nobody ever offered me any. The Meilin gives nectar to any kids of age who haven't received it. You guys deserve more medals, Rollan said. The jailer held up a scolding finger. If you have the potential to summon a spirit animal, it will happen on its own by age 12 or 13. But do you know what could happen without the nectar? The bond is a gamble. Drives some people mad, others to illness, some die on the spot. Others are fine. But with the nectar, it's always stable, Rollan said. The great beast may have not done much for us lately, but we always owned enough for the nectar. But to benefit, you have to use it. Rollan huffed. What are the chances I'd call an animal? Like 1,000 to 1? Less? The jailer ignored him. I know a green cloak who tends to orphans. I'll send her around by and by. The jailer turned and climbed the stairs. Rollan stretched, pivoting at the waist, then raising his hands high. I didn't expect a show today, said the gaunt man in the furthest cell. What do you think you'll call? Nothing, Rollan said. I thought the same thing, the gaunt man said. I was wrong. I called a hedgehog. You're a green cloak? Rollan asked, surprised. The gaunt man snorted. His eyes looked lost, his posture exhausted. You see any cloak? My animal got killed. The absence left me... I wish I lost a limb instead. An hour later, maybe 2, the jailer returned with a couple of uniformed militiamen and a green cloak. She was in her late teens and of medium height. Her face wasn't very pretty, but it was kind. The jailer unlocked the cell gate and beckoned for Rollan to step out. One of the militiamen held up a small cage with a rat inside. Exiting the cell, Rollan nodded at the rat. Is that a joke? They say folks bond more easily if animals are present, the militiaman said with a jeering smile. We caught him a couple years back. He's our mascot. Very funny, Rollan said dryly. Should we hunt for some spiders? Maybe a cockroach? People don't bond with insects, the green cloak said. Although there are some precedences for summoning arachnids. I'll bet a copper piece he calls nothing, said the prisoner, who Rollan thought looked like trouble. The man patted his pockets. Wait, 2. He produced them. Any takers? Nobody agreed to the bet. Should we do it then? Rollan suggested, breaking the awkward silence. For some kids, the summoning ceremony was a big deal. They got all dressed up with their families, spectators attended, lectures were given, refreshments served. He was in a dirty jail with a rat, his guards, and his fellow prisoners. He just wanted to get it over with. The green cloak produced a simple flask. She uncapped it and held it out to him. Only takes a swallow. That's quite a speech, Rollan said, accepting the flask. Your talents are wasted in dark basements. You're ready to work above ground. He took a sip. There was a restaurant that sometimes gave him sweetened cinnamon toast, his favorite treat. The nectar tasted sort of like that, but liquefied. Rollan wiped his lips. As the green cloak reached for her flask, Rollan swayed. Sparks zinged through his body. What was going on? He held out the flask, but his arm felt unsteady. The green cloak took the flask and Rollan dropped to his knees. What's wrong with me? Rollan slurred. The entire jail rumbled and the room grew dark. Or was his vision failing? A blinding light appeared, lingering for a moment, and then vanished. A falcon had joined them in the room. Large and powerful, the feathers a brownish gold with white speckles on the breast. With a flurry of wings, the raptor leapt up to Rollan's shoulder. When the claws pinched into his skin, the sparking sensation ceased. The others stared, dumbfounded. For a moment, Rollan's eyes seemed unusually keen. He was able to see the porous textures of the stone floor and walls. He spotted a spider hiding amid the wafting cobwebs in a high corner, and felt the startling moves moods of those around him with abnormal clarity. And then, all of a sudden, he was back to normal. "It's a falcon," the green cloak marveled. "A griffin falcon with amber eyes." "She's a falcon," Rollan clarified. "She's a girl." "How do you know that?" the jailer asked. Rollan paused. "I just do." "She would be female, I suppose," the green cloak murmured. Seeming to snap out of a trance, she stared at Rollan searchingly. "How is this possible? Who are you?" "Just some orphan," Rollan said. "There has to be more to it than that," she muttered, half to herself. "I'm also a criminal," Rollan volunteered. "The worst kind of criminal, actually." "What kind is that?" the green cloak asked. "The kind who got caught," Rollan replied. The green cloak glanced at the jailer. "Put him back in his cell. I'll be back." "The bird, too?" the jailer asked. "Naturally," the green cloak replied. "It's his spirit animal." "Guess it's my lucky day," mumbled the seedy prisoner. "Nobody took my bet. I get to keep my coppers." It was not long before the jailer escorted a man to Rollan's cell. The stranger looked like some sort of foreign lord. He wore high boots, leather gauntlets, a fancy sword, and an embroidered blue cloak that Rollan guessed cost more than a team of horses. The man had a neatly trimmed beard on his chin, and gazed at Rollan with interest. "Would you like to get out of here, Rollan?" the man asked. "I might miss the itchy mat and the black stuff that rubs off the bars," Rollan said. "Sometimes we don't appreciate what we have until we lose it." The man smiled, but with a hint of a sneer. "Why isn't your cloak green?" Rollan asked. "My name is Duke Zerif," the man said. "I work with the green cloaks, but I'm not one of them. They send me to help with cases like yours." "Cases like mine?" Zerif glanced at the jailer. "Better if we converse in private. I've paid your bail." "Fine with me," Rollan said. The jailer opened the cell door. Rollan stepped out and the bird on his shoulder and exited with Zerif, never glancing at the other prisoners, not saying a word to anyone. What did this guy want? When they reached the street, Zerif looked over at him. "That is a superior bird." "Thanks." Rollan grunted. "What now?" "Today your new life begins," Zerif said. "We have much to discuss." "Bail isn't a pardon. What about Mr. Erdas?" "The charges will be dropped. I'll take care of it." Rollan gave a slight nod. "What about the girl who gave me the nectar? Where is she?" Zerif flashed a cocky grin. "These matters exceed her expertise. You are no longer her assignment. Come." The falcon gave Rollan's shoulder a brief, painful squeeze with her talon. Despite her weight, Rollan had nearly forgotten her presence. Something about the timing of the squeeze and the way Zerif had spoken about the girl made Rollan uneasy. "Is she all right?" Did a trace of admiration creep into Zerif's grin? "I'm sure she's fine." He was lying, and Rollan knew it. Is Zerif ever seemed to respect that Rollan suspected him? Rollan felt the disturbing certainty that Zerif had done something to the green cloak. Just who was this guy? Zerif hurried them down a street. "Where are we going?" Rollan asked. "A quiet place to talk, then far from here, if you like. Have you ever yearned to see the world? That bird is your ticket." The falcon shrieked loud enough to hurt Rollan's ears. Zerif's eyes darted between the bird and Rollan, his smile faltering a bit. "She doesn't like you," Rollan realized. "She's just testing her voice," Zerif answered. "I mean you no harm." Rollan would have bet 2 coppers that he was lying. His response had almost sounded relaxed, but Zerif was definitely acting, and he was wearing a large sword. "What is that woman doing?" Rollan asked, pointing across the street. As Zerif turned to look, Rollan ran. They had passed an alley, and he turned and sprinted down it. Halfway along the alley, Rollan risked a glance back and saw Zareth in pursuit, blue cloak flapping behind him. The man had jerked his sleeve back, and the mark on his forearm flashed. A canine creature landed in front of him, already running. What was it? A coyote? Rollan had hoped that the lordly stranger would be above chasing him. Apparently not. But the coyote proved that Zareth was one of the marked. Maybe he was a green cloak after all. Still, Rollan didn't trust him, and neither did the bird. He needed to ditch him fast. Rollan had some expertise escaping down alleyways. He ran hard and extended his hand to topple crates and rubbish bins into the path of his pursuers. In spite of his efforts, he could hear them gaining. Visions of coyote teeth and the threat of Zareth's expensive sword impelled him to run faster. Rounding a corner, Rollan raced through an alley. He passed an occasional door, not daring to try it in case it was locked, or that whoever lay beyond might not aid him. He had learned the hard way that an orphan in flight had few friends. He glanced up, looking for a way to the rooftops, but there was nothing in view. The man and the coyote kept gaining. Ahead on the left, Rollan saw a fence between buildings. He jumped and grabbed the splintering top of it, and kicked one leg over. With a snarl, the coyote leapt for his dangling leg. Teeth tore through his pant leg and scraped his skin, nearly yanking him from the wall. "Come down from there," Zareth ordered, racing forward with his sword drawn. Rollan rolled over the top of the fence and fell into the weeded lot with a shanty in one corner. A ragged man glared at him unwelcomingly from the shadows of his hovel. Springing to his feet, Rollan dashed across the lot. As he approached the fence on the far side, Rollan glanced back. The coyote streaked across the lot towards him, but there was no sign of Zareth. Had he tossed his spirit animal over the fence? Rollan scanned the scraggly ground ahead as he ran for something to use as a weapon, but saw nothing. The coyote was closing in. He knew he would barely win the race to the fence. No way would he get up and over without getting mauled. When Rollan reached the fence, he jumped and grabbed the top with both hands as if he meant to climb, then turned in midair to kick the coyote springing at him square in the muzzle. The blow connected cleanly, and the coyote hit the ground with a yelp. Rollan was up the fence and over before the animal had recovered. The alley he landed in was wider. As he debated which direction to go, Zareth shot around the corner, running with superhuman speed. Rollan couldn't run half as fast as Zareth was moving. Zareth had gone around most of the block in the time it had taken Rollan to cross the lot. Rollan had heard stories about the power the marked could receive from their bonds. How could he escape from someone like that? He turned and ran the opposite way. Racing around the corner, Rollan found himself sprinting towards a large man in a forest green cloak astride a moose. There was no time to digest the bizarre sight. The moose barreled towards him, its massive antlers spanning almost the full width of the alley. The gray-haired man sat astride it, had a thick beard and a fleshy face framed by a bristly beard. He clutched a mace in one hand. A mailed shirt jangled under his cloak. "Out of my way, boy!" the green cloak bellowed. Lunging sideways, Rollan flattened himself against the wall of the alley as the moose charged past. He heard a shriek above him and a scrape of talons on metal as his bird landed on the roof. Zareth and the coyote bolted around the corner, skidding to a halt when they saw the oncoming moose. The green cloak gave a battle cry and raised his mace. Zareth shouldered through the first door he reached, probably the back entrance to some business. The green cloak paused for a moment, as if about to give chase, before he rode back to Rollan. "What name did he give you?" he barked. "The guy?" "Zareth." "That much was true. Do you know him?" "I just met him. He bailed me out of jail." The man dismounted. "What did he tell you?" "Not much," Rollan said. "He wanted to take me away." I expected he did. The man said, We call Zareth the Jackal, after his spirit animal, a cunning creature native to Nilo. He works for our arch-enemy, the Devourer. The Devourer? Rollan said. It seems so improbable. He almost choked. Are you serious? Who are you? My name is Oliven. Rollan glanced at the huge moose and back. No way. It couldn't be. The Oliven? He said, shocked into a whisper. If by that you mean the worldwide commander of the Greencloaks, then yes, the Oliven. The griffin falcon shrieked and swooped down to land on Rollan's shoulder. Rollan reached up to stroke her feathers. He paused a long moment before he spoke. Suddenly, everyone wants to be my friend. Both of you show up so quickly. Is this about my falcon? She's not your falcon, son. She is the falcon, Alvin said, letting the word sink in. You have summoned Essix back into the world.